Hey everybody, welcome back to PA Concepts. Today we're going to be talking about our radio button guards again, and that is because our radio button guards are finally, finalized. They're finally done. We've done all of the iterations that we can possibly think of, and we're ready to get them into the hands of you guys. So what I wanted to do in this video was talk about the development from kind of start all the way to finish, and really show you guys sort of the inception of the idea and how we built everything out, how they're designed now, what the final design looks like, and ultimately, how these button guards will help you. So, with that being said, we designed two separate radio button guards, just like I've said in previous content, previous videos, we've designed two. One for the Baofeng UV5R. This is one of probably the most popular entry-level radios, at least in our particular niche. And then one for the Quansheng. This is the UV 5K or K5. I can't remember. I think it's the UV K5. Very similar name, but this radio is pretty sweet. So we'll have videos talking about this radio in the future. It's a little cold out here, so I'm going to save you the details of that and just talk about our button guards. Let's start with the Quansheng. This is actually the initial prototype of the Quansheng button guard. As you can see, it's quite small, it's quite thin, and it's actually printed on PLA plastic. So we use PLA because it's a cheaper, easier to print filament, and it would be able to kind of get that overarching idea figured out quicker. So as you can see, there's a lot of differences. It is very thin, it's very brittle. You can kind of twist it and pull it apart. There's sagging, there's all kinds of different stuff. Not very well detailed. But this was the first prototype. This is the first design. So this functions in basically almost the exact same way. It still comes down over your guard. It protects your volume knob. It protects all your buttons here. But it's not that great. It doesn't really stick onto the radio very well. That is for sure. There was a lot of work that needed to go into making this better. So probably about 10 iterations down the line, we finally landed on this design. This is almost our final design, but there's some things that have been changed. So as you can see, first of all, it's a lot more stout. You can just kind of tell there's a lot more material. It's a lot thicker. It's a lot less brittle. You can't really bend this as easily. You can tell that the inside has some more detail in how it actually interacts with the surface of the radio. The buttons holes have shrunk and gotten closer to the radio, those kind of things. So this still goes on the exact same way. Fits a little bit closer, but it was still lacking something. It kind of wasn't super sturdy. We also went to ABS filament for this. ABS is a lot better at withstanding impacts, which is perfect for our radio button guard. This was getting very close, but it wasn't quite there. So enter our final design for the Quansheng button guard. This is our final design. So we went back and we took off some of the unnecessary plastic. If you look at these two designs, they're very similar, but you can see we've taken off some of the designs. And yes, that 26 on there is how many iterations in design we have made to get to this point. In fact, I think we're probably at like 28, but 26. This is basically the same exact thing. Now, as you can see, very similar form factor, still very well built, still pretty thick. It's still great, right? We removed this part because we found that this wasn't really protecting anything. It wasn't really doing anything. It was just kind of there, and it was extra unnecessary material that we really didn't need to waste. So we removed that part, did some more form factoring on the front side here. So that was one of the big things that we wanted to do, is make sure that it cups the side of the radio a lot better. Comparing these two, on the inside of the actual button guard where the buttons are, we have a lot more distinct and pronounced layering inside. So as you can see, a lot more distinct and pronounced layering on the inside. And that interacts with this portion of the radio here, right where my two fingers are at. It interacts with that portion of the radio to make sure it has a nice, solid, clean fit and feel. Let's push this on. You can see we added a little bit of an extra cutout around the A and the B buttons so that they're a little bit easier to press. Added this little cutout so that you can remove the not the battery, remove the screws if needed. But the big thing that we fixed on this button guard was, I noticed, having used this one, that whenever I sat my radio down in my pouch or in my even in the console to my truck, whatever it was, if I sat it down on something, it could press on this and it would just immediately pop up with very little resistance whatsoever. So we went back to the drawing board, and with this particular one, you'll see on the Baofeng we don't have that issue for a design choice that the engineers of the radio made. But on the Quansheng, there's not really a good way for this to fully attach. So we sat down, we looked at it, we thought about it, and we actually noticed that there's a lanyard slot on these radios. Now, one thing that we really wanted to do is make sure that we're not taking away any functionality out of the box from the radio with our radio button guards for both designs. We never want someone to have to decide on if they're going to use our radio button guard or if they're going to use some factory setting of the radio. So what we did to fix that, we looked at the box. We looked and saw what came in the box. And in our particular boxes of Quanshengs, we have probably 3 boxes. So we have 6 radios. Well, sorry, we have 6 boxes, 6 radios, 3 different orders. Not once do we ever get a lanyard loop. So we said, you know what? People don't really use lanyards anymore for their radios. They have them clipped in somewhere or in a pouch somewhere, or buckled on to themselves in some way. They don't really use lanyards. So we said, hey, let's use this little lanyard hole as a way to attach this button guard and have a positive click. So you'll actually see comparatively here, there's a little knob, a little notch there. That notch is actually printed in, and it is designed to clip into that lanyard hook and provide a more clean attachment point for your radio button guard. So this was a huge development for us, because this allows this radio button guard for the Quansheng to not require any additional hardware, not really use any of the hardware that's on the radio, not prevent you from using any hardware out of the box with the radio, and it clips in and it's a lot more secure. Now, it's not the most secure thing, if you really bump it, it's going to come undone, but it takes quite a lot of upward force, a lot more than if you just sat the radio down. This also fits around the buttons and around the radio itself a lot easier. So that's super cool for the Quansheng. You'll also probably notice that the texture looks a little bit different. So one thing that we had with this texture was it's very thin, or not very thin, it's very smooth. Besides the print face here, it's very smooth. We wanted something that was going to be a little bit more easy to grip if you had wet hands, or it was raining, or the guard was wet, or whatever it was. So we added in this this texturing to the actual guard, so you still have your texturing on the front, but it's kind of all throughout the entire button guard, so it makes it a lot easier for you to grip if your hands are wet, your radio's wet, what have you. So that's something that we did for both the radio button guards. Now, also on this one, we spent a lot of time behind the scenes. Not a lot of people understand 3D printing, and I still fully don't. We have a guy helping us with that, but one thing that I did notice, ABS printing is difficult. It's not easy. There are a lot of printer settings that you have to alter. It's a lot more finicky. It prints at a lot higher temperature. It requires an enclosed printer, all of these different things. But we think it's well worth it for you guys who are going to be using these button guards, including us, because it makes the device a lot more robust. I'm not sure if we've put out the drop test video. We might have put that out already. If you did, card up here, you can check out our drop test video where we tested impact on these. It's very good. But we noticed that, there's some delamination on this, and I probably can't because my hands are too cold here. But delamination is where you don't have the layers close enough together. So a 3D printer prints in layers, right? It has a little tiny layer that it prints up, and it builds up and up and up. That's all well and good, but we ran into this delamination issue, and that took a while to figure out. That's why we had so many different designs, because we were saying, well, maybe it's not the printer, maybe it's not the settings, maybe it's not the G code, maybe it's just our design. Maybe we have to have something else. There's sagging. You'll notice sagging on the unsupported parts where it prints. This is how it prints. It's flat right here, and it prints up. So on some of these top portions, it's unsupported. There's nothing there for it to print onto. It's just hanging. And that's where you see a lot of that sagging on both of the guards. That is something that we really wanted to get rid of because it doesn't look very professional. It doesn't look great, especially for something you're purchasing. There's not really any structural difference in terms of the structural integrity of the device, but it just doesn't look good. So that was a lot of what we did, was figuring out the right settings for the printer, the right settings for each individual guard, because, well, each individual style of the guard, because they are different. And that ultimately took a lot of time. Eventually nailed down the printer settings, nailed down the G-code, and now we have basically no sagging, and we have a very, very nice clean part for you guys to use. So that's the Quansheng. Let's talk about the Baofeng. Now the Baofeng is a little bit easier for us to design for because it actually has 2 screw holes here, and the radio itself comes with hardware for your clip. Now one thing we wanted to do is make sure that you can still use your clip with the radio, right? So this is actually one of our first prototypes of the Baofeng one. You can see there's 3 holes up here. You can see some sagging, but this is PLA. It didn't need to be perfect. It clips in relatively well, but we noticed a handful of things. First of all, the top of this is a little high. It provides good protection, but it's just a little high. We wanted to come down on that. Secondly, you'll notice that the button, particularly the push to talk, is pretty easy to press. It's not really guarded very well by this. You can still, even if you just rub your hand across it with a little bit of force, you can press it by accident. That's not great. This is our first. This is actually really difficult to get on and off because it kind of like snaps in a little bit. But obviously we have this cutout on the back, so you can still use your included hardware to attach your clip and still use your clip, which a lot of other guards don't allow you to use. But you can still use that with ours. And that's a cool part. But these button guards were a lot easier to design because we have a very robust, solid point of contact for the guard to actually clip into. It screws in. It literally screws into the radio. So it wasn't difficult like the Quansheng, where we had to go through a bunch of prototypes and test out different things and then eventually find a little workaround that actually works pretty well. But with that being said, this is our first Baofeng design. So you can see this is very different. Let's look at the final design. This is the final design. As my hands freeze, it is so cold, and I picked a rooftop to go to, and it's windy and it's cold. But this is our final design. So as you can see, we opened the top. Now, part of this was because of the G-code of the printer. We didn't have it solved at the time. We thought that maybe it was just our design. A lot of this is unsupported, and it looked really, really bad with ABS because it was sagging a lot. So we decided, well, we don't really need to protect the bottom of the antenna. That's just kind of how it worked out. We don't really need to protect the LED light. That's just kind of how it worked out. So we decided that we were just going to open that up completely. Saves us a ton of material, saves us a ton of print time. I mean, something like that might only be 10, 15 minutes of print time, which might not sound like a lot, but whenever you're printing 5 at a time, you're saving that time over and over and over again. It makes it a lot better for actually producing these and getting inventory up. So that's a really cool aspect of it. This design on the right, though, kind of gives you guys, well, I guess on your guys' left, it gives you better access to your battery and better access to kind of the top parts while still protecting the button. We extended this this plate right here that your clip actually interfaces with. We extended that down a little bit, made it a little bit fatter than something like this. And the reason why is it just helps your clip function a little bit better. You have a little bit wider range of motion. It just works better. Another thing that we did, obviously, was shrink this top part down. This is now just barely taller than the button, so it can fully protect it without making it too terribly difficult for you to actually press. One thing that we did do also was we extended the height of this side a little bit, so it will no longer press any of the buttons if you just rub your finger, even if you rub your finger with a lot of force. Now, one of the issues that came up whenever we did that, unfortunately, was it was really, really difficult to hit these smaller buttons like the call button and the Monty button. or Moni, I don't know, the little tiny buttons. It was hard to press, so we added some funneling in there so that it's a little bit easier to press. And that's basically all that we did. So, and yeah, we're very, very happy with these. Like I said at the start, these are available on purposefularmament.com/radio. Again, purposefularmament.com/radio. We're selling them for $5. We want to have a good open line to you guys. So if you guys buy these and you notice anything that's wrong with them, or even if you're out in the field or you're out at your job or doing whatever, and you say, hey, like, you know, this was unbelievably fragile in this particular circumstance, or this didn't work in this circumstance, or it didn't interface with this how I thought, or whatever it is, make sure to message us at support@purposefularmament.com, and, you know, just give us photos, descriptions, anything that you can give, because while we have done a lot of testing on these, a lot of development over many months to get these to the point where we are comfortable selling them, we still want them to be good for you guys. So let us know if you guys have any issues. You can purchase them, again, purposefularmament.com/radio. And I think that these will help you guys immensely. Again, don't have to be some cool tactical TED guy that got, you know, all dangling and radios and everything. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this PA Concepts video. It's freezing, so I'm going to get out of the cold. I'll see you guys in the next video. And remember, stay armed.